Jen Mize is a singer, a songwriter, a producer, a mentor, and a great collaborator, having created music with her band, the Rough N Tumble, as well as writing songs with other artists, in addition to releasing solo music. Her latest solo song, that was a lot of S's, is My Buzz. And after I've recovered from my S's, I'm going to talk to Jen about it. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Sophie. There's a lot of S's there.
Look, I did it to myself. So
You're like a songwriter. That's a good alliteration. You're working it out. That's good.
I'm a big fan of alliteration, and this is an unplanned question, but do you too like alliteration?
I do. I do think it's a wonderful thing if used sparingly. You
Mhm.
know, you can. Some people get too caught up in it, and if you have like seven things, if it's you get to Susie sells seashells down by the seashore type of stuff, and it becomes more nursery than actual like songwriting. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of alliteration. I think it's a great technique.
That's a great way to put it, more nursery than songwriting, because
Yeah,
yes, that's the sort of thing.
yeah.
As a singer, would it ever trip you up? So just like I tripped myself up with two S's in a row. But as a singer, are there certain alliterative letters that you would avoid?
Yeah, well, like I always tell my songwriting students, let's sing it and see how it feels. Like, let's sing it down and see if it feels clunky. And if it feels clunky to sing, I mean, because that's the whole point, right? You're trying to get people to sing choruses and sing songs with you. You want the audience singing with you.
Mhm.
So if say you're a really great singer and you're great at phrasing, you can sometimes make things too tricky for anyone to sing along with.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like you don't have to dumb it down. You just have to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand. Like, yeah. And so I tell my students, I'm like, let's sit down and see how that feels. And there's not any one great, way of doing it. There's no formula. It's just a
Mhm.
feeling. I usually go with it intuitively, like, oh, that feels really good, or that feels a little clunky. I don't know, maybe we should make a few changes.
And I suppose it's that balance for a singer with a voice like yours between all the things you can do and all the things you could potentially offer to an audience, but yes, tailoring it to the song and the message and making sure that you don't do too much. But I would imagine there is a bit of push and pull, perhaps especially when you start your career and you're thinking, well, I've got all these tools, why don't I use them?
Why don't I use them? And why don't I use them all right now? Like, yeah, I have made that mistake in the past. I had a song on one of my first records that was called Biscuits and Gravy. And the chorus was just like a big list of American food
Right.
things that I missed. I think because I moved to Australia and it had this big list of American foods. And I've had a lot of people tell me they love that song, but no one can sing the chorus back to me. Not a single person. Because
Right. Okay.
like
Got it.
like I say, like biscuits and gravy, chicken and dumplings, fried pickles and hush puppies. And I keep going and keep going. So when anybody requests it, they go, can you do the biscuits and chicken song? Can you do the chicken gravy? Like,
Yeah.
song chicken gravy? So like it's pretty funny. Like I've learned a lesson from that, going, okay, yes, it's cute and it's a novelty and it's used once is good, I guess.
Right.
Maybe try making the songs a bit more singable for everyone.
Yeah. And it seems that that must stem from a core intention to communicate with and connect with an audience. Because if you weren't interested in that, then you would just do whatever. You would show it all at once.
And like on some songs I'm going to do whatever I want anyways, because it's what I want to express, right? But if I'm trying to write something that I'm really trying to engage an audience, and I envision playing gigs where they're singing it with me, I'm going to try to make it a little bit more um a bit more user friendly.
Yeah.
Some of the things I've written in the past, that's for sure.
And I guess also in performance for you, because you have this extraordinary voice, that what you offer in performance would shift and change depending on the setting and who's there and what you feel at the time.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it depending on the gig or the music festival or the room. It's there's a really big difference. Say at the Gimpy Muster, between singing a gig at the Grove and singing a gig in the Blues Bar.
Right.
Um, totally different venues, totally different expectations for the audience. So yeah, you make little changes here and there,
Mm.
still maintaining your authenticity and still staying true to who you are. But yeah, there's room for maneuvering.
Yeah. And have you ever got into the studio to record a song and you wrote it with those intentions we just talked about, and then you get in there and think, well, no, this is not right. I'm just going to completely change how I've written it, and I think that that's going to be the right thing now.
I have changed things at the last minute in the past. One of my favorite stories and most successful last minute abrupt changes was when I was working on Warnings and Wisdom with Shane Nicholson.
Mhm.
And we had Duncan Toombs in the studio for the day.
Right.
And Duncan was just supposed to come in and sing some backing vocals. But like everyone else, I mean, this was 2016, I want to say. So Dunk hadn't done a solo record of his own yet, but he came in and I knew Dunk could sing, but then he started singing and I was like, oh, I want I want more Duncan Toombs, please. So one of the songs that was just supposed to be a solo song was a duet. I rewrote it in the studio as Duncan was laying down backing vocals for Deep Water. I rewrote Forget Her,
Right.
and made it a duet from dual perspective while everything else was happening, because I couldn't just let him go
Right. Yeah.
without trying that. And best decision I ever made. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw him singing his own material. He was in Lynn Botel's band, but also supporting her. And I was like, where has that been all these years?
Oh man. I mean, like I knew he could sing. Obviously I knew he was a great player. I was a big fan of and used to follow Adam Eckersley band around quite a lot when Dunk was in the band. A little ways back, and I knew he could sing. Like I knew he could do it. But then again, you don't know what you know until you know, which is what
Yeah.
Duncan,
Yeah.
Duncan
And everything
showed
in
Shane and I in that session. We were both like,
it.
"Wow, awesome."
Yeah, you've been keeping that to yourself, Duncan, and now it's time to let it out. Although obviously he did take a little while longer to release his own material. But back to your material,
Yes,
Jen. So the
yes.
song in question is My Buzz.
Mhm.
What is your buzz?
Well, I'll tell you a little backstory about this song, Sophie. So I have a tendency to doom scroll the news. um I because I'm an American who lives in Australia, all the things that have been happening in the world over the past 15 years but longer. I kind of watch it from my couch in the mornings, and I'm like, "Ooh, it's not great." you know so I have a tendency to, when talking to people at a party, to talk about politics and ozone layer and, all these really dark, deep things. And I realized I pulled myself up on it one day and realized I was just being an absolute Debbie Downer and killing everybody's buzz. And I basically, gave myself a little uppercut to the self. And I wrote this song to remind myself not to do it. There's a time and a place for everything, and when people are having a good time, try not to be a buzzkill. Yeah.
And in fact, Debbie Downer gets mentioned in the song. And the origin of this phrase is
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Saturday Night Live. I still watch it a lot, but I watched a lot of Saturday Night Live back in the day, early 2000s, late 90s, when I was, in uni myself. And Debbie Downer is a character that Rachel Dratch did on Saturday Night Live. Anybody who's interested, go YouTube Debbie Downer, and you'll have some fun.
it is it's a great alliterative character name. There we go.
It is very alliterative. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and I found myself being my version of Debbie Downer a few times, and yeah, just had to give myself a little bit of a talking to, a pep talk. And yeah, these days I'm trying very, very hard to lean into joy and to lean into the things I can control, and into the people I love. And yeah, so it's a little bit of a homage to, living while you can and doing the best you can and spreading joy.
I think it is hard though to do it because everything pulls us towards the Debbie Downer life. And it's almost like I remember when I was in high school, a maths teacher saying that actually everything tends towards mess, that the universe is pulling us towards mess, essentially, which was a relief for a teenage girl to hear. But it's almost like the same thing with the doom scrolling, is that everything's pulling us in that direction. So to fight against that takes quite a lot of commitment. You have that initial decision, but you got to maintain.
Yeah, you got to mean you feel a little like a salmon swimming upstream, and there's there's like, if the news and all the bad things in the world are all the grizzly bears, like you're like, I have no, just keep swimming, you're just trying to get by, but really, when you think about it, there's really no other choice. The other choice to lean into it is really not good for one's mental health. I mean, obviously you can be as active as you want politically, each of us, and with the environment, and you can go out and do the stuff, be proactive, yes. But if that worry encroaches on all of your day-to-day life, it can really, really hurt yourself mentally. So I basically, I wrote that song for me to keep myself out of the darkness, really.
So you said you're leaning into joy. What are the things that bring you joy?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I ever did for myself to lean into joy was to start the Rough N Tumble. That band makes me happy. The music that I get to make with that band makes me really happy. And because I started making that music with the fellas, I realized that making music consistently was better for me. So I am leaning into creation all the time now. Like, I am in full blown creative mode most of the time. I mean, I still do all the admin things and all that stuff, but it's write more songs, record more songs, do more projects, do more duets, work with more songwriters. Just, for me, that's my buzz. My buzz is, creation, songwriting, right, working with other people, collaboration. It's the best. It's the best feeling. Yeah.
Do you think it's easier to stay creative than to get creative in the first place?
Ooh, well, you can, like I have in the past, very much so, gone into like creation hiatus, or, unintentionally, for good long periods of time. And yes, I think you definitely need some momentum when you've been quiet for a while and you haven't been creating. You might doubt yourself a little bit more than normal. And if you're constantly creating, you're so regularly confronted with those moments of doubt that you tend not to care, because you've broken through those moments of doubt on a regular basis. So you go, oh yeah, that's just the voices in my head being doubtful right now. That happens. Next. So yeah, I think for me, continually having that, instead of doing it cyclically, where and then I go into admin, and then I go into promotion shows, and then I'm just constantly, I might be doing admin and promotion on something else, but I'm constantly creating new things. And for me, that seems to be a better cycle for my mental health, for sure.
That is such a great way to put it, that if you're constantly creating more, the moments of doubt just become almost so commonplace that you realize that the stakes for those are lower. And I actually haven't heard it expressed like that before, but that's reassuring, I would imagine, for a lot of people who are feeling doubt, as every person who's creating does.
Yeah, one of the biggest surprises for me when I was, young and up and coming songwriter, was to find out that my heroes all doubted themselves as well. And not across the board, of course, but they all everyone goes through these slumps, feeling, in American baseball, we call it the yips. I got the yips. It's like you don't know, you can't remember your skills and what you have and what you bring to the table, and you're so afraid of a mistake that you're stagnant. You stop yourself from doing stuff. And really, creativity is such a flow state based thing. If you can engage flow state more regularly, I think most people would be shocked how much you can actually create if you are creative,
Hmm.
constantly going into flow state and forcing yourself to do that. I think we'd all be really surprised of how much comes out of us.
Yeah.
Then you have to figure out what to do with it all.
Yeah.
but you know, one problem at a time.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day and saying to think of creativity as being like a river that is constantly flowing, and you can step into and out of the river as you wish. And sometimes it's not safe to step into the river depending on what's
Right.
going on in your life, but it is always flowing.
Yeah, it's always flowing. And I think of it like, okay, so if you have, say you have creative muscles, right? And if you're a gym person, right, and you go to the gym regularly, and then for a couple years you don't go to the gym,
Mhm.
the next time you go to the gym, you're gonna take it slow.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or you might like, lose your footing a little bit. But if you're a daily, 5 times a week, 4 times a week in the gym, you know what you're doing. You're in a flow state. That So it's a lot like that. I think working those mental muscles can be very similar to working physical muscles.
Mhm. I also wonder if it goes towards what motivates you as an artist, in that if you are constantly creating, you don't really need to find motivation because that river is flowing. Or is it that it's that in itself is the motivation?
It can be. I think it can be both. Like when the river is flowing, I'm one of those people that, with songwriting especially, I tend to be like a bad eavesdropper. Like I just listen to people's conversations all the time, and I'm constantly noting, well, that's a really cool phrase, or that's a cool line, or if I hear something and there's a really cool chord progression, I might go, oh, well, that's cool. How do I do my version of that? Or, so that stuff, if you're in creativity mode, I think you're a better listener. You're a better creative listener.
Mhm.
So it's easier to tap into possible inspiration
Mhm.
because you're listening. Your like creative ears are on,
Yeah.
lack of a better way of explaining it.
So then you were talking about what to do with things when you are creating a lot, and then you have to work out what to do with it. So obviously for you, part of it is you do things with the band, and then you're doing solo projects as well. Do you have some organizational system for your output? So you're like, okay, well, I'm making all this stuff, and I'm going to have this folder here for that might be Rough and Tumble. This might be Jen My Solo, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I have to be a little bit more organized than I used to be, for sure. Because otherwise it just gets really convoluted, and I don't know what I'm doing at any one given moment. There's still those mornings where I wake up and I go, oof, what am I gonna tackle today? But for the most part, it's folders. It's just scheduling, monthly and then week to week within that month of the things, task oriented things I need to get done. And I mean, if I add on top of it all of my session work, which I do at home, I do a lot of background vocals for people's records. So that's just another thing. I'll get a message from Shane Nicholson going, hey, I've got these 3 songs for this artist. Can you get it back to me within the next 2 weeks? And I go, yep, I'll squeeze that in here, here, and here.
Mhm.
Which again, that just keeps me in creative flow. So I relish every time I get those opportunities. And sometimes I'm doing backup vocals for somebody's record, then I'm going to the place that they're recording. Like later this year I'll be going to Kelly, to do Kelly Cork's new record.
Right.
um so it's kind of all at the same time, and
Mhm.
you're trying to just field it all. But when I'm teaching songwriting at the Songmuster or the Dag Sheep Station, I'm fully there.
Mhm.
It's easy at the DAG because there's no Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So everything else just stops, and everyone knows that I'm kind of unreachable for a few days. But at the Songmuster, I'm just, in the moment. There's no time really to have many distractions. And then I keep a very, very specific folders for
Right.
each co-write, and I do a lot of my co-writing now on my computer, which I didn't used to do. But just for file's sake, now it's necessary.
You mentioned that no internet access at the DAG. It's surprising how often that comes up as cited as an advantage when people talk about the DAG. Like, it's so great. There's no internet.
It is really great. It's so great because you're fully in the moment. No one's on their phones, you know, scrolling or anything like that. Everyone's fully like in the present moment, which is really beautiful. The one thing that can get a little tricky with that is if you want to do research.
Right.
Like, if you're trying to write a song about a place. I was working on a song with a fella named Cody, and we were trying to research a place we couldn't research, and that was all I knew. Is I knew it was someplace close to where I'm from in Nevada, and I was like, I don't know the name of that, but it's someplace west of Tonopah. And he's like, can we put that in the song? And I was like, yes, we can.
So there you go. You use the lack of research as an advantage.
That's right. We rolled with it because we had no other option.
So you mentioned the Songmaster, and the Songmaster was, in fact, where you co-wrote Ruby Jane's single "Hoot and Holler" along with some other people. And that's coming up, I would imagine, again, because we're at the time we're talking, the Gimpy Muster is only a few weeks away.
We just did it. It was like a week and a half ago.
Oh, because for some reason I thought, why did I think it was on at the same time as the Muster? That makes no sense whatsoever.
It used to be. No, you're right. It used to be. The only thing was we were also we would do the song muster and then do the Gimpy muster, and we were all like just like spacey. We had no ability to actually do the muster properly when it was right back to back.
So was it at Gimpy, the Song Muster?
It is. Yes, it's held at the Australian Institute of Country Music in Gympie every year.
I have seen that building because I was in Gympie last year, and I took a wrong turn and came up at this building and thought, what is this? It's an Institute of Country Music, but it was nighttime, so I didn't get to go in. So therefore, how did this year's session go, or this year's Muster go, rather?
It was fabulous, and the song muster is really working in joint with the Gimpy muster. Now they're like they share an office, but it's really starting to come together. And oh, it was fabulous. We had such great students this year. It's always a good group, but this year was really special as well. You know, it's basically 4 days of heavy songwriting, sometimes 4, 5, 6 songs a day.
Right.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it's very Nashville style where you got an hour and a half.
Right.
Like, or you have we have longer writes, shorter writes, usually at minimum 4 writes a day. Sometimes if you're in a longer write and you get one done, you'll go for a second, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So given that pace and the skill set you need to teach songwriting at the Songmaster and other places, do you think it's affected how you write songs yourself? Like, have you become more brisk in certain ways, or are there certain efficiencies that you've learnt by teaching songwriting?
I have definitely. And it also depends on the song. Like if I'm writing something that's like a real tear jerker or a real thinker, I'm not going to try to write it in an hour and a half. Like not for me. That's not going to work for me. But if it's something that's, you know, pretty I don't know, groin based or heart based and isn't really a real thinker and is more of a
like groin based.
I did. We used to say that thing in theater where you go, is it your head, your heart, or your groin? Is it like, so is it sexy or is it, you know? And I don't know about you, but if something is, you know, not is lower than heart based, you're not really using all your cerebral stuff to sort that out, and you don't need it. But the song have a groove and needs to have a feel, and you know, and I think, you know, the songs like Hoot and Holler getting plastered, there's some place between heart and groin, you know, they're gut based, I guess.
Yeah. There's another one you can add: groin, gut, heart, head.
Yeah. And it's not, we're not, you know, it's not getting the Nobel Prize anytime soon. So we're not, you know, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're, you know, trying to write what we're thinking, and it's a pretty simple subject. I want to go out and I want to party tonight because I've had too much stress. Okay, great. Those types of songs can come together really quick. And I think places like the DAG and the Songmaster have taught me that when to knuckle down and be, really thorough, and when to just let it flow and go with it. And yes, you can edit, and you should, and yes, you can rewrite, and you should, but not getting in the way of everything because you will be brilliant all the time is probably, sometimes it's misplaced. Yeah.
For you in those scenarios, you're the mentor in the room, you're the teacher. I would imagine there's a certain responsibility to manage the energy flow as well. And you would also be dealing with some insecurities on the
Oh,
part
yeah.
of the emerging songwriters. So how do you manage your own energy flow and energy levels with that sort of thing? Because I imagine it could be quite depleting at the end of that process if you don't know how to manage it.
Look, I didn't initially know how to manage it whatsoever. It was something I kind of picked up over time. And yes, you're right. I mean, especially if you are tackling something a little more heart-based or emotional, things can get really emotional, and you're trying really hard to tap into truth, everyone's truth in the room. And that exposes vulnerabilities sometimes. Uh, so depending on the song, it can get really difficult to manage. And sometimes, like that can be, you're trying to manage the emotional status of everyone and yourself,
Mhm.
and keep things moving forward. And then sometimes you're trying to manage the fact that everyone's got great ideas and they're just piling all of them at the same time. And you're just trying to type as fast as you can and get, what did you say? What did you say? Oh, cool, cool. No, I like that. Great. You guys like that, Um, so yeah, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do in the world. And sometimes my best method is to just sit back and be quiet for a moment and let everything, you know, let the room settle a bit.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's it's like an obstacle course. Um, I don't want to make that seem like, that the students are, at all dysfunctional. They're some of the most functional people I've ever met, and they're really good songwriters for the most part. Like, we have so much skill and talent and dedication to craft in this community. I'm really, really proud to be a part of it. And a lot of times I'm learning from them. It's pretty constant give and take. Hopefully I can bring them enough for them to keep coming. But yeah.
Well, it's also that you're holding space, but it's a different form of holding space than live performance. And so that's, yeah, again, it's not like you can necessarily translate those skills to that room. You have to learn a different way of doing it. So
Yeah.
that's a statement more than a question, Jen.
Look, I'm still trying to get my head around it, Sophie, because some days I'm more successful than others. But for the most part, everyone's so full of grace in those situations. Everyone's trying so hard to be cooperative and be part of a group that most problems, if there are any, are fairly easily dealt with. You just have usually you just have an open heart-to-heart conversation with someone and you get to know them better. And it's like, it's kind of like sometimes, depending on the kind of song you're writing, there's somewhat trauma bonds. If you're writing a big heavy, you can get some trauma bonds going in the room where people are really sharing if they feel safe.
Hmm.
I'm not super deep into let's have trauma, everybody, but if that comes up, and I do know that being truthful and being vulnerable on those types of songs is really the way to write them. Like, um you can't really shy away from that. So yeah, you end up coming away with closer relationships with all the people that you're writing with,
Hmm.
because you've been frank and open and honest, and there's a safety in those rights.
Yeah, and a big responsibility for you too, I would imagine. But there was one thing, there was an unintended consequence from Hoot and Holler that I heard about from Ruby Jane, which is that you, Jen, got your first tattoo.
I did. I got my first tattoo. Ruby Ruby had been going around saying that I was like her rock and roll fairy godmother, and look, I latched onto that the first opportunity I got. I was like, wow, thank you. That makes me feel good. I love that. And then when we started to do, we were getting the song together, and she's like, I've got this idea for the video. And she's like, I think I'm going to get a tattoo. Would you consider it? And I was like, I don't have a tattoo. And like, honestly, I was really scared that the pain would be a lot. I thought,
Fair
oh man,
enough too. Yeah.
is this going to be so painful that I'm going to chicken out and like, be like Phoebe on Friends and get like the little dot that's like, that's the world from my mother's point of view. Like, am I going to be that lady? But no, we got to the tattoo studio, Solid Gold in Gimpy, and Ruby started getting hers. And then, I don't know, maybe it was the room, maybe it was, the environment, but my husband and my mom were both in the room. So I got the tattoo with my mom in the room. She was here for a visit. So I was just like, you know what? I can't let Rubes do this by herself. I got to get in there. I was thinking of originally getting an owl, but I'd looked at all these owls because I really love owls. I had looked at all these owls, and they were all really intricate and would take a goodly amount of time. And that time we didn't have. So I opted for Howdy. And so I have Howdy tattooed on my hip. Yes. Yes, I do.
Well, look, that's an appropriate word. And it's very wholesome that you had your mother in the room.
It's a wholesome when you have your mother in the room and you get Howdy tattooed on your hip by a strange guy. Like, yeah. It was one of those things. I didn't realize that. Yes, it was. It didn't tickle, but it wasn't anywhere near as painful as I thought it was going to be. I have a premonition that there will be many more tattoos on me in the future because I like them. I was just always, a chicken, and then I realized it's not that big of a deal.
Right. Well, I look forward to tales of more tattoos. Who knows? And maybe you'll have to have them for music videos. I don't know.
I wonder if I should just get them for each song. Like, maybe I got to go get a little honeybee someplace. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, the song does lend to that. The song we are talking about is, of course, My Buzz, just in case you've forgotten that, because I've been getting you to talk about a few other things. I'm actually still thinking about the whole, I know, groin base, but also like groin, gut, heart, head, because it's quite visceral, and it's a really great way to categorize songs. If you think that when you're writing something, you can feel it in certain parts of the body. There are different emotions that have different feelings in the body. So to come from those different places, I would imagine, does really enhance the writing experience, and then perhaps the way you perform it, because you can connect to that feeling in your body.
Yeah, it's I'll sound really strange when I say this, but it's actually a technique in Japanese no theater that I learned when I was in theater school, either head, heart, or groin. That's how characters are played in that theater. So yeah, it was just something I carried over to when I started songwriting. I was like, oh, this is just a gut groin song. So we're not trying to overthink this, kids. We're just trying to tell the truth. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I think it's because it does speak more to the way we experience music as listeners too. It's what do I feel like listening to? And often it is that, what do I feel like listening to? Not what do I think I want to listen to.
Right. What medicine do I need right now? I mean, sometimes for me, it's about like, okay, well, I really just need to go and kick my boots up and go have a good time tonight. And I don't want to listen to these really poignant, deep human condition songs right now. I love those songs. They're the reason I'm a songwriter, but it's not what I want right this minute. Right. I want to make a little noise. I want a margarita. I want to, like that's what I want right now.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, horses for courses, I guess.
Yeah.
So is that how you say that? I don't know.
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of music to listen to, what are you listening to at the moment?
Oh my gosh. Well, I really cannot get enough of a guy named Brent Cobb. I can't get enough of Brent Cobb right now. I stumbled upon a few of his tunes, and then I kind of went backwards and went back through a lot of his work, and it is country, but it's soul funky kind of country. And I just can't get enough of Brent Cobb. Just can't. So
And
good.
how do you tend to find artists? Is it by word of mouth, or you just floating around Spotify or something like that, and it's a recommendation?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I'll get word of mouth things from friends that are, just, like I have to thank Greta Ziller for putting me on to Foy Vance years and years ago. Because God bless you, Greta. He's fantastic. But yeah, you get those friends that like tip you off.
Hmm.
And there's things, I mean, I used to do the radio show with Patty McHugh. Patty McHugh put me onto his Golden Messenger. I really love his Golden Messenger. Um, but yeah, like I'm constantly taking in music. And I can't say enough about the new Grace Potter record that came out this last year. Whew, Grace Potter.
I'm
She is,
making notes, man. I'm making notes.
oh my gosh, she's rad. She is so cool. Um, who else? I mean, there's so many people making great music these days. We're all real lucky.
We are, well, and you're one of them. And anything you sing is amazing. And I was listening to the Rough and Tumble record again recently, and just there were so many musical moods on that, all conveyed by your voice as well as by the musicians who are playing with you. But that's a whole journey in itself. My Buzz has come out as a solo single. Are you? The last time we spoke about the Rough and Tumble, I remember you were saying you were working on some more music with them. Are you thinking you're going to release the occasional solo single in amongst that work, or is there a solo project you're working towards?
So there's a solo project that I'm almost I'm almost done. The plan is I'm going to release a solo EP between every Rough and Tumble record. Only because much like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, there are songs that are Rough and Tumble right, and there are songs that are not. There are songs that are, the brand Rough and Tumble, and then there are songs that are outside of that brand a bit. Um, and when we did the Rough and Tumble record, it was before COVID. So I had all this time while putting it out. And I was in Sam Hawksley's song club. So there were a lot of songs written, and they're good. Some of them are really worth, putting my effort into. So this project, this little solo EP, is one of two EPs that I'll be then making one album out of. This first EP is more country leaning. And the second EP will be a little bit more folk and blues leaning. But between that will be the next Rough and Tumble record.
Right.
And I'm self-producing everything on the EPs. So it's totally me behind the helm. I mix the EP songs with my really great engineer Jason Millhouse, who I work with all the time. We do the Rough and Tumble records together. He's got a really great studio in Brisbane called Record Works in Cooperoo, and he's got a fantastic ear, and I trust him totally. So when I started working on this little EP, I just brought in some of my favorite players and started working on these little songs. And that's kind of, I think that for me will be the way I roll out music for the future. Right. Like I will always have a Rough and Tumble record either in process or coming out. And in between that, I'll be doing my little EPs, my little songs that are, little solo things. And, we might do some of those on the Rough and Tumble gigs. If people really dig them and, everyone's like, can you play that song? Then, because some of the guys in the Rough and Tumble are on the EPs as well. Like, so it's a bit of a mixture.
Well, it would make sense to play some of those songs in a Rough and Tumble gig because your fans would be your fans, and might want to hear it.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot like, I mean, I guess I thought a lot like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, who Tom Petty's like one of my biggest heroes ever. And, he still brought out solo records in between Heartbreakers records. And a lot of those records, the Heartbreakers are the players on those records. They're just not the songs that would be Heartbreaker songs. As years went by, I'm sure he played all those solo songs at Heartbreakers shows.
Yeah.
Because the audience was like, mix it up. We don't care.
Yeah, we're just here to see you. Would you consider, or have you ever produced other people?
I haven't done that yet. I've co-produced most of my projects, other than the record I did with Shane, where he produced that. Every single one of my records I've co-produced.
Right.
So, but as I've done that for a while, I've gotten better at producing and driving the bus and relying on myself and not second guessing my own ideas. I still lean very heavily on the musicians that I hire. I'm one of those who believes very seriously about casting. I think put the right people in the room. And a lot of times, let them be themselves. And if you cast the right people and you stay out of their way, they're going to bring you gold.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't dictate to them everything, I mean, maybe you might have a few ideas here and there, but if you don't tell them what to do, you're probably going to end up with better stuff.
Right.
You just get out of the way. You just like put geniuses in the room and step back. It's awesome.
But part of the genius of you is, I think, recognizing what's in them, as you said, casting, bringing them together, but also recognizing when you need to get out of their way, and perhaps when you need to step in, and then what you do with it as a producer.
Yeah.
And in the mixing process as well. So I am interested in whether you would ever produce for other people, because I'm interested in whether that would be part of your creative flow, or whether that's actually a separate function that may not flow the way other things do.
To be honest, I reckon it would be part of my creative flow. I reckon I'd really enjoy it. But since this is my first foray in driving the bus by myself, I wanted to be my own guinea pig initially. But yeah, I could definitely see myself producing records for other people. I would definitely do it with Jason Millhouse, probably with a really great engineer, because there's a big difference between producing and being an engineer. Some people are engineers and producers and all that stuff, but I can capture okay, but there are some things that are beyond my skill and that I'm learning about as I go. And I will trust the professionals with that, because that's what they do every day. It's, I love the idea of being fully DIY. And I think, eventually I myself could do my stuff fully DIY, but it takes away some of that collaborative process that's really beautiful out of that, which for me, I don't think I'd find it as fulfilling. And again, I think, if you get the casting right, you put the right people in the room, the magic happens when, you're working with the right folks, the right musicians, the right engineer. That's really important. And work with people you really like. Like, I would choose people I love over people who are supposed to be the best.
Right.
9 times out of 10. Now, a lot of the people I love are, in my opinion, the best. But I would choose vibe. I think vibe is as important, work ethic, ethos, vibe is as important as skill.
Mm-hmm. Well, the energetic flow would definitely be better in that room with between you than thinking again about feeling rather than thinking that person's the best.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like honestly, the better musicians in anything are the people who don't really have huge egos. The people with huge egos usually aren't as skilled as they think they are. The people that are really skilled are humble because they know how much they still need to learn. They're amazing, and a lot of them are my friends, so I really I really feel wonderful when I get to show them off to the world. I mean, on this last single, that on this next EP that's coming out, the musicians are just fantastic. I've got Steve Fernley on the drums and Zach Watson on bass. I've got Danny Whitcomb on guitar and dobro, Luke Muller on fiddle and mandolin, Andy Schrav on keys, and then little old me and the wonderful Jason Millhouse, and that's a pretty awesome crew. So yeah, I mean, really all I have to do is try not to get it wrong, try not to mess it up, because they play such great stuff. All I have to do is just don't overcomplicate things, and they get the vision of the songs really quickly.
Well, that is a great lineup, but they do need a great leader, and they have that in you. And the song is my buzz, and I'm excited to hear that there is an EP coming, and then more Rough and Tumble, and then more EP. So
Yeah.
plenty of music in the Jen Mize flow, shall we say? And how wonderful it has been to talk to you, Jen. Thank you so much for your time.
Sophie, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. It's so great to see everyone's videos come up from you, because I tune in a lot. I listen to a lot of them because I'm like, I don't know this person very well. Let me just listen in. They're great.
Well, thank you for watching.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.